Alright, let's talk about what a tornado actually does to concrete, because I think most people get this backwards. When you see the photos after a storm, roof gone, walls scattered across the yard, the whole house basically peeled open, your instinct is to assume the foundation's shot too. It usually isn't. The concrete underneath is almost always still sound. What failed is the hardware tying the building down to that concrete, and here's the thing. That's the part almost nobody actually goes and looks at. Wisconsin got a pretty blunt reminder of this on July 27th. If you were anywhere in the Fox Valley that morning, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The National Weather Service office in Green Bay rated that storm an EF3, with estimated peak winds around 140 miles an hour. It formed about 2 miles west-northwest of Appleton late that morning, tracked south through Fox Crossing and Menasha, and finally dissipated over Lake Winnebago at 12:22 in the afternoon. Do the math on that. That's a violent tornado on the ground for roughly 26 minutes, moving through populated neighborhoods. Homes, businesses, trees, a lot of damage in a short window. And that same system wasn't done. It dropped hail over 4 inches across near Gresham up in Shawano County. 4 inches, that's bigger than a softball. It knocked down trees and power lines around Eagle River, Hiles, and 3 lakes too. Governor Evers signed an executive order declaring a state of emergency, and said the state was ready to help with recovery. So now the cleanup starts, and this is where I want to slow down and talk about the part that gets missed. Poured concrete is heavy, it's continuous, it's set below the frost line. Wind almost never moves it, that's just physics, there's nothing for the wind to grab. What does move is the framing sitting on top of it. Here's how it actually fails. Wind gets under a roof edge and lifts. That uplift load doesn't just stay up at the roof, it travels straight down through the walls and lands on the anchor bolts holding the sill plate to the foundation. That's the mudsill, the piece of treated lumber that sits flat on top of your foundation wall. Every bit of that force ends up right there. And if those bolts are undersized or corroded or spaced too far apart, which on older homes is pretty common, the sill plate splits. Or it peels right off the top of the wall. Think about what that means. The concrete is completely untouched, perfect, and the house is a total loss. That's why a post-storm inspection should start at the mudsill, not at the shingles. Everybody looks up, you need to look down. So let's go through what you're actually checking. Start with anchor bolts and sill plates. Walk the entire perimeter of your basement or crawl space and look at every single point where wood meets concrete. You're looking for 4 things: a gap between the wood and the concrete, a split in the plate itself, a washer that's crushed or dished, or a bolt that's pulled upward out of the pour. Any one of those means your load path is compromised, and a compromised load path means the next storm has an easier time than this one did. Next, foundation walls. You're looking for new cracks, and specifically horizontal ones or cracks that step down along block joints. Those tell a different story than a vertical hairline. Here's a useful tell: fresh cracks show clean, unweathered edges. Old ones have dirt in them, staining, maybe some efflorescence. So photograph them now and date the photos for your insurer while they're still obviously fresh. That window closes faster than you'd think. And understand, a structural crack in a poured wall is a completely different animal from a shrinkage crack. Shrinkage cracks are normal. Concrete cures, it shrinks, it cracks. That's not a failure. But if you can't tell which one you've got looking at it, don't guess. A foundation and footing specialist can usually settle that question in a single visit. Then your driveways and flatwork. Wind rarely breaks a slab, falling trees and airborne debris absolutely do. Look for impact spalling, that's where something hit hard enough to chip out a patch and expose the aggregate underneath. Check for chipped edges. And check whether any panels now sit lower than the ones next to them, because that's displacement, and displacement is a different repair than a surface chip. But here's the one people don't see coming: cleanup causes its own damage. Skid steers, stump grinders, debris trucks running loaded, all of that equipment rolling across a residential driveway slab that was never engineered for it. I've watched driveways that came through the storm without a scratch get cracked in half during the cleanup 2 weeks later. Nobody's fault really, but nobody's watching for it either. Last thing on the list, drainage. Storm debris plugs downspouts and fills your grade swales fast. Suddenly water that used to run away from the house is pooling right against the foundation. In July that seems like a minor annoyance. Come November, when the freeze and thaw cycle kicks in, that pooled water is doing real work on your foundation every single night. That's the slow-motion damage that shows up next spring. Okay, so what do you do with what you find? Thin, shallow hairline cracks in a slab, both sides level, seal them and keep an eye on them. That's it. Debris impact spalling, chipped or pitted with aggregate showing, patch it or resurface it. A cracked panel where one side sits higher than the other, that panel's getting replaced. You can't patch your way out of displacement. A horizontal foundation crack running level, maybe the walls bowing inward slightly. Stop. Structural evaluation first before anybody quotes you a repair. And a sill plate lifted off its bolts, visible gap between wood and concrete. That's new anchors and proper hold-down hardware. Now if you're rebuilding, a garage, an addition, an outbuilding, anywhere in Appleton or Menasha or the Fox Valley, the foundation stage is the single cheapest moment to buy yourself wind performance. It costs almost nothing extra right then, and it's brutally expensive to add later. Set your anchor bolts in wet concrete at full embedment. Don't drill and epoxy them in afterward if you can avoid it. Treat code minimum bolt spacing as a floor, not a target, especially on an exposed site. Tie new slabs into the existing foundation properly instead of just butting them up against it. And specify rebar, not wire mesh alone, anywhere a vehicle or equipment is going to sit. Same thinking goes for outdoor space. If tree removal tore up your backyard, get that base compacted and graded properly before any new patio pour goes down. A slab is only ever as stable as what's underneath it. One more thing, and I'd be doing you a disservice not to say it. Major storms pull out-of-state crews into Wisconsin within days. Some are fine, some are gone by October. Before you hand anybody a deposit, ask for a Wisconsin address, current liability insurance, and references from finished work in your own county. A local contractor is still here next spring when that first freeze and thaw tells you whether the repair was done right. If you've got storm damage, Appleton, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Madison, Kenosha, Racine, we're Concrete Contractors Wisconsin, and we'll come out and take a look. Bring your photos and whatever insurance paperwork you've got, and we'll tell you plainly what needs structural work and what just needs sealing. No pressure either way. Take care of your foundation. It's the one part of the house that's still going to be there.